Okay, the next PCS guideline that we're going to look at is multiple procedures B3.2c, which states multiple root operations with distinct objectives are performed on the same body part. When that happens, you're going to be coding, you've got to deal with two separate codes because you're doing two different things. The example we're going to use is destruction of sigmoid lesion and bypass of the sigmoid colon to the rectum. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to be removing a lesion. Right, that's number one. And number two, we're going to be bypassing the colon. We'll just put sigmoid here. Okay, all right. So that stands to reason we're doing two different things there, aren't we? Here we're removing something and here we're bypassing something. The intent is, we've got two different intents. We're going in to take something out and then we're going to reroute things. So we're going to have two root operations, aren't we? So the first one we need to think about is, let's get out our handy dandy Hogan Academy PCS root operations flip bits, okay? And let's think about it. When we are taking out a lesion is something that is growing that's not supposed to be there as part of a body part. So if we look at take out some or all of a body part, we're going to look at destruction here. And that is physical eradication of all or a portion of a body part by the direct use of energy, force, or a destructive agent. Now, typically when they go in, they may do a couple of different things to remove a lesion in the colon. They may go in and do a snag removal where they actually take a little loop and a little wire and loop and they put it around there just like a lasso and they snag it. It's sharp enough that and small enough that it just snags that piece right off. They might use laser. They might use some type of a cautery, but they're gonna destroy that piece with the use of some type of energy or force or a destructive agent. Therefore, number 5, destruction, is what your root operation is. So let's go ahead and write that in here. Destruction. And I'm going to put down here that I know this is 5 because that tells us that our third character is going to be 5. The next one we've got to figure out is the bypass of the sigmoid colon. Now, when we're bypassing a sigmoid colon, let's take a peek at our listings here and what we have to choose from. Are we taking out some or all of a body part? No, it doesn't say we're taking it out. Are we taking out solids, fluids, or gases? No. Are we cutting or separating? Well, we are cutting or separating, but let's just kind of keep going because I think there might be something that'll fit better. Put in, put back, or move some or all of a body part, or alter the diameter or root of a tubular body part. When we think of tubular body parts, a lot of times we think of vessels, but the colon is a tubular body part, is it not? So let's take a peek there. And look what we have right there, bypass, altering the route of passage of the contents of a tubular body part. That's what we've got. And for an example, they actually have a colostomy, don't they? All right. So we know here that it's our root operation is bypass, and the character that will represent it is 1, the number 1. Okay. So here we have lesion removal, and we have bypass. Okay, so let's go ahead and just put our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So far we know that our third character is going to be 5 and 1. Now, you just got to remember we're building, right? We're building a code. We're not looking one up. We have to actually build it. So now we've got to decide where our major body system is. So let's get out our major body system list. And our major body system, if you look right here, what do we have? Gastrointestinal, which is represented by the value D. So let's go ahead and put that here. Gastrointestinal by the value D. So our major body system is our second character. So let's put that there, D. We know that our first character is going to be 0 because it's a medical surgical, okay? All right. Now what's our minor body part? Again, we're doing a destruction of sigmoid lesion and bypass of sigmoid colon to the rectum. So we have our minor body part is the sigmoid colon, right? What is our approach going to be? Well, are we going to do a bypass of the sigmoid colon as a laparoscopic procedure? Probably not. It's going to be an open procedure, okay? There is no device, so we know that it's Z. So we know that our sixth character is Z, right? And we don't know yet if we have a qualifier. So I'm going to leave that blank, okay? So that means now we start to dig into our code book. So let's start with the destruction. So let's go with destruction. We're going to look that up first. Let's look up destruction. Okay. Now what are we destroying? We're destroying a lesion, but do you remember what we look up as our subterms? Do we look up a lesion or do we look up the body part? We look up the body part. So what was the body part? It was the sigmoid colon. So let's look for colon. Okay? Let's look for colon. And what do we have there? We have colon, ascending, descending, sigmoid, and transverse. And so for our sigmoid, we have 0D5N. So let's just kind of write here. We're just going to write 0, just somewhere, D5N, so that you have, actually let's write it right up here, 0D5N, so that you don't forget, okay? And let's go ahead and look at that particular table. 0D, okay, 0D, and we want the number 5. Zero D5, and we want to look for 0D5N, it tells us, sigmoid colon. So we have destruction, sigmoid colon, which is what we did, okay? So that does seem correct, so I'm going to write, right here, I'm going to write N. Next thing I have to decide, was it percutaneous, was it endoscopic, how was it? It was open. Because it didn't tell us anything different, okay? And then we don't have a qualifier, so it's C, okay? So it's 0D5N 0ZZ. So now let's tackle the bypass. So let's go to bypass in our index. Bypass. Okay, and what are we bypassing again? We're bypassing the colon. So let's go to colon, and here we have sigmoid again, 0D, 1N. So let's go ahead and write that down there so we don't 0D, 1N, just so that we don't forget, because sometimes you do and you end up flipping back and forth and it just takes you longer than it needs to. So 0D once again. Only this time we're going to go to 1. Now, I want you to notice that up here at the top, it's very important that you pay attention to this. It says on multiple pages. That means that if you turn the page, there's more on bypass, and it will say continued. Okay? It's very important to pay attention to that. All right? So let's start looking and see if we can find colon, sigmoid colon. Now, it just so happens that the sigmoid colon is not on this page. So let's turn the page, and we will go to bypass continued, and we're going to look again. Transverse. Sigmoid. Now, we have, actually it's important to pay attention, we have 2 rows that start with sigmoid. And once you start in a row, what's the rule? You stay in that row. You can't look here and then pick one from here and then pick one from here. You have to stay in that row. All right? So if we look at this, N does appear to be the correct character. All right? Now, we need to look at our approach. Here we have open, percutaneous endoscopic, or via natural or artificial opening endoscopic. And here we have percutaneous. We already know it's open. Therefore, this is the row we're going to stick in. We're going to stay right here in this row, right? Okay? So we're going to say 0 for open. Okay? Now, if you look, there is possible device characters. There are possible device characters. However, we do not have a device that we've used whatsoever. We have nothing. It would tell us if there was a device and there wasn't any tissue substitute, so we use Z, right? Now, the qualifier here is going to be where you were bypassing to. We were bypassing from the sigmoid colon to where? Well, it said we did a bypass of the sigmoid colon to the rectum. Therefore, your last character, your qualifier, is going to be P. All right, so we have 0D5N0ZZ and 0D1N0ZP. And that is how you code destruction of sigmoid lesion and bypass of sigmoid colon to the rectum.